Welcome to WiredToHunt's Whitetail How-Tos, where we provide a step-by-step tutorial for one important deer hunting task.
Today I want to talk about something that probably almost every whitetail hunter is going to run into multiple times: natural and unnatural barriers. I would categorize roadways, railroad tracks, depending on how busy they are, the Mississippi River and some of these larger impoundments as unnatural barriers. And then for natural barriers, I would consider smaller rivers, depending on how deep they are, really big, wide open spaces. And all of these things I want to talk about could potentially keep deer from crossing them. And we often look at this stuff like it's a negative, but you can use this as a positive. If you have to hunt around some of these natural barriers like that, you can use it two different ways. You can use it to predict that deer will travel parallel to it, because they most likely will, but you can also use it for access. And I've started really trying to look for spots where if I can get out on a county road and get in the ditch, or I can get in a highway and get in the ditch, walk a half a mile down and pop in somewhere else, I look at that like it's the safest access I could have as far as alerting deer. Because you've got the noise of the road, you've got a nice way to walk in. If you leave scent on a road, who cares? And so you can actually use these to your advantage, and you'll find concentrations of deer way closer to the roads and way closer to the parking areas than you'd expect. I've killed some of my biggest public land bucks finding little spots right off of roads that just allowed them to avoid most of the hunting pressure that entered in there. When you talk about rivers as a barrier, they vary so much on their depth and their width. Now, if you're looking behind me at this Mississippi River that's gonna be unlocked from this ice real soon, yeah, I'm sure a few deer a year swim across that, but that's a pretty good barrier. Like, there's not a lot of deer that are like, I have to get to the other side so bad that they're gonna brave that river. That's a big barrier. There's gonna be some parallel trails to it. You're gonna be able to use that to your advantage somehow. When you get into smaller rivers, you might have a river that looks like a nice smallmouth or a trout stream that has lots of shallow spots to cross and rapids. Or you might get into a situation like I found in Oklahoma a few years ago, where through all my e-scouting, I could see this nice little creek running through this chunk of public that I wanted to hunt. And when I got there, it was a drainage ditch that was way deeper than I thought. I only found two spots where I could cross it and not get soaked. And those also happened to be the two spots that the deer were using. So that little drainage ditch functioned as a barrier to keep them going parallel, and it really pinched down where they could cross. So it worked both ways for me. If you're struggling with these river bottom whitetails, or you have that situation, pay close attention to how they're using it. There's almost always parallel movement, and there's almost always a place to cross. And if there isn't a place to cross, you have a natural barrier to their movement. You can use it. You can use that for your setups with the wind. You can use it for access. The other thing that functions as a barrier to whitetail travel is just those wide open spaces. They will run across them. You know, during the rut, you'll see a big buck out in the middle of nowhere and think, what the heck is he doing? But most of the time, for most of the year, they're not going to want to expose themselves in daylight in a place where they have to get up in the wide open and walk for a mile to get to the next block of timber. So even though it wouldn't really look like a hard barrier, you got to think about how they want to live their lives. How are they going to use that barrier? How are they going to travel around it? When you start figuring that stuff out and using these natural and unnatural barriers out there in the whitetail world, you find amazing access opportunities. You find some very predictable deer movement because of them. It might not be a traditional setup where you're close to an interstate, but the deer don't care. They're using it anyway because they have to. And if you figure that out, you can fill more buck tags. If you want more whitetail hunting advice, please listen to the WiredToHunt podcast and the WiredToHunt Foundation's podcast, and we'll give you everything you needed to hear about deer.